Okay, so what is sensory processing? You've heard this term a lot, and basically everybody knows about. In grade school, you learned about there's five senses, and there's actually more of those than just five. And basically, what sensory processing is taking all of those things within the environment, taking them into your system, processing it, and then be able to perform whatever it is that you need to do. So, our kiddos, for example, they need to come in and sit at the table and say, eat a snack. Well, there's a lot of sensory going on at the just doing that simple activity. And us as adults and maybe most of us have filtered out certain things that are in the environment. So if let's say you come into the classroom, now the classrooms are usually noisy, busy, there's all kinds of stuff going on in there. Kids are ruffling around, adults are ruffling around. So there's a lot of input. The rooms are really bright. There's humongous windows outside. So you have to think about all of these little things that we have to filter out to just be able to do maybe something that we think is simple, just sitting down and eating a snack. So our brain takes all that information that's going in the environment, the sounds, the smells, things that we hear, things that we, people walking around us, things like that. We have to take all of that in, process that information, and then be able to do the things that we need to do. When we are doing that well, we are considered to be self-regulated, which is another huge word that you may hear a lot, hopefully you hear. And again, it's just, I'm assuming you still are all self-regulated and able to listen to me and haven't fallen asleep yet. But it's just your ability to be able to sit and, again, just take in that stuff and then be able to perform and be able to do those things. For example, one that always just pops out of my head, and I just feel like parents could kind of relate. Now, what do you do with a baby when they're fussy and crying? Probably, let's say the baby's young enough, you're swaddling the baby. So you're providing some input, some calming input to the child, which I will get into. And then probably most likely you're either gently singing or rocking the baby back and forth. So what you're doing is you're teaching that baby to calm down, and you're teaching that baby how to self-regulate. And that's what, how you would do it for an infant. We just have to figure out, how do we do that for a 3, 4, 5-year-old that has all different interests and likes and things they may or may not like.
No,
so again, I mentioned we all learned about 5 systems, right? Taste, hearing, tactile, olfactory, being able to smell, and vision. But there are actually 8 systems. They just haven't really taught you much about the other 3. And those 3 systems are interoception. So that's how you feel on the inside, your ability to feel hungry, maybe if you feel sleepy, understanding what that means in your body. Proprioception, which is that term you hear a lot, body awareness, just being able to know where your body is in space. I would know that with my eyes closed, I'm still sitting on a chair. Some people, some children, it's so severe that they're not even aware in a sense. And then vestibular, which just is a fancy word for movement. And that's just, the movement input, which is in your ear and your, that kind of, because you see a lot of kids that are seekers or big movers. So we have to definitely work in tapping into that system to help them become self-regulated. And if anybody, if somebody needs to interrupt me or they have a question, feel free, because I'll be happy to talk, because I know this is a lot of stuff. Oh, the other thing is, I forgot to mention, is this is a very big concept, as I'm sure you're all aware, this sensory processing. I decided to cut it down because it was just a lot of information on an hour. So right today, we're going to touch upon proprioception, which is that body awareness. And I just feel like that's really the most important thing for me to get you to understand what that means so you could help your children. And then we're also going to go into the interoception, just because I don't think it's been talked about a lot. And I know a lot of our kiddos have issues concerning that. So I thought we'd talk a little bit about that. So today we're just going to do those two systems. I'm hoping to do more, and if you guys are all interested, just let us know, and I'll be happy to continue on, I guess, the sensory processing series. Okay, so proprioception, again, that's body awareness, and that's the sense that gives us, or that's the sensation that gives us the information about where our body is in space, the information we get into our muscles, into our joints, and all of that other, as it says, connective things. And then it's also the ability, so I don't know if anyone has ever seen this, you close your eyes and people have been tested, can you find your nose? Maybe a neurological test or whatever. That is the doctor or whomever testing you based on you knowing where your body is. So if you close your eyes and you missed your nose, that's a very good indication that you're having issues knowing where your body is in space, not having the need to look at yourself to know where it is. I know a lot of times I'll see that with our kiddos climbing up maybe an unfamiliar kind of ladder. And a lot of times I see them, or like if they're coming down, they have to look because they can't rely on their body. They're not getting that information, so they have to look to see where they put their foot. So that's a big indication of some body awareness concerns. So what does this look like? Again, I'm using that word body awareness because knowing where your body is in space. But it also looks like poor coordination. Do you have a kid that's constantly tripping or going into things? Grading pressure. Do you have any children that are so rough with everything? Or like they're coloring and or actually most of my kiddos who I'm working with coloring have this light grasp because nobody wants to color with me, but they have a light grasp and they just don't get it. They don't know to like push a little bit harder. So we have to, again, just add some strategies to help them along with that. These are kids that bang their head. These are kids that bite. These are kids that are constantly leaning on you, crawling on you, or all over everybody. What it is if you think about it, they're trying to find their body in space. I would be anxious if I couldn't feel myself, and I would constantly be banging into things. You know, if you hit your head, all of a sudden it's like, oh, there's a body part, you know? Sometimes we see that also around your mouth. We have kids that have feeding difficulties. They may avoid certain parts of their mouth. They don't have the awareness in their mouth. So how are you supposed to eat a piece of chicken if you can't even feel your tongue? So a lot of times our kids have, again, some issues even concerning of eating. This can show up as a concern. Also kids that chew on things. So if you think about it, you can't feel what's going on in your mouth. I would chew on things too. Sometimes when our kids have texture issues when they're eating, what happens is they will avoid some of those textures because it's just too much for them. Or you see them putting all of that stuff in their mouth because they can't eat. Let's say just for example, they have a hard time with crunchy textures, so they're going to avoid it. But they may also be the kid that's mouthing the toy in the corner because that input they get from eating, they're not getting. So now they have to seek it some other way. And to be honest, even though biting toys and biting others isn't always the best challenging behaviors we want to see, but it is a way of our children, even with all of these things, it's showing them an awareness. Maybe it's not the right strategy, but it's just showing awareness that they're at least acknowledging their body needs this. So they're doing it some way. And when you think about it, that's a really good skill. At least they're figuring that out. And that's really great to see. And then again, like I mentioned, having to look at what they were doing. So again, if you just think about it, and I did have a really great example that I went to a training years ago when I first started as an OT, and there was this gentleman, do not remember his name, but he wrote a book. He was an autistic man, and he talked about what it felt like to have poor body awareness, and I thought this was a good idea, like a good way to explain. Did you ever fall asleep on your arm? You wake up for a second. Well, you wake up, the first second you're like, oh my God, I can't feel my arm, like you can't really control it. That's what he said is like having poor body awareness. So if you could think about that, and I don't think he necessarily meant like pins and needles, but just that lack of feeling and control over your whole body, that would be hard to do anything, let alone go to school and do all this stuff that we're making our kids do. So you can see there's a lot of challenge. Like if you've ever tried to do anything with gloves on, that's hard. You can't manipulate things. So here I am having our kids pick up small objects. When the body awareness, it's like they're not feeling it. So a lot of times we have to, again, do a lot of these strategies to help them. So what are some strategies? So I did mention a couple. There are tons and tons and tons. And I always, any of the kids that I see, I'm always happy to talk and come up with some solutions at home that fit your family and your routine. So always, please feel free to reach out to me. But just listing a few, playing in a sandbox. So if you think about that, that is so much input. Maybe even some of us are cringing at the thought of it. But if you think about it, if you're not feeling body, now you're in sand, you're digging sand, you're under the sand's over you, things like that. Now it's like, oh, okay, there's my body. There it is. This feels good. And one thing I actually haven't really mentioned is this is the sensation that helps to calm you. So if you're the kind of person that likes a good hug and you go up and you get a good squeeze and you're like, ah, thanks, I needed that. This is the reason why it feels better, because you're tapping into that sensory system. You're providing that deep pressure, that deep input. You're getting into the muscles, you're getting into the joints, let's say, and you're squeezing, and all of a sudden it's like, that felt good. So this is a big strategy, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to address this first, is this is the really obvious, or this is the one that really helps with calming. Now, a lot of times if you are already ahead of me thinking about the movement piece, yes, you can't really separate movement from a lot of this stuff, which I have today. And you can't really separate all the sensory systems, obviously. And yes, movement does play a big part. I just didn't want to bombard everybody with so much information today. And if you need further today, I will be happy again to discuss it further with anybody if you have questions. And then another thing you'll hear a lot with proprioception is heavy work. And heavy work is just what it sounds like, is getting something that really challenges our kids. And you would be surprised. I have challenged a lot of our kids with, we have kettlebells and like weighted things, like weighted balls, a lot of stuff at Five Below. And let me tell you, our kids are picking up 5-pound balls and hauling them into like containers. I'm always impressed by how well they can do. But just think about, you're doing all this stuff, carrying the groceries, bringing in the big old gallon of milk. It really can help with tiring her out. So here he is, he's carrying this big thing. I gotta tell you how. Hopefully he's tired. And then I know probably some of you are thinking, well, I'll probably take a lot more than just a gallon of milk. But it's just one of those strategies you could start. Maybe brings in 2 gallons of milk. I don't know. But it's just one of those things that you could implement really easy throughout the day or throughout your routine to help them get the input that they need. Just little kind of things you could do. Again, big obvious one, playground. You can't get any better than that. Again, if we get into another vestibular discussion about this, there is a lot of talk, well, one of the things I should say is that if you have a child and there's too much movement, so again, some of you may be thinking, oh, they go to the playground, but they're still bouncing off the wall. Well, what can be happening is you're not providing enough heavy movement. You're giving them, heavy work. You're giving them movement. So let's say they're on the swing. Yeah, they're swinging, woohoo. You're giving them the input, they're moving. Yes, you're thinking correctly. But what is it that you're doing that's calming them down? Not really much. Their body's not doing anything, especially if they're in one of those chair swings. They're just hanging out, relaxing. And yes, in some ways, it can be very calming. And I know there's kids out there, they get out, they love to swing, and sometimes you see them, they're starting to nod off because they're just in this gentle relaxation kind of thing. But if you know, some of our kids, they have energy, they need to burn. So, an example, and I do this and I get in trouble all the time on the playground, not just school, but everywhere, is I'm the mom that's telling my kid to climb up the slide, which, everybody, go down the slide, go down the slide. But if you think about it, you're climbing up the slide. You really got to climb up this incline. You got to grab on. Your feet are digging in. Now, instead of going down the slide, wee, this is fun. I'm getting input, but not slowing down. Now you turn around and go up. Now they're climbing. Now you are really involving their muscles, and now it's really helping to slow them down. So that's the difference of adding the heavy work to an activity. I did add some swimming, karate, dancing. Swimming is a huge one. Think about the input that you're providing. You just dunk them in a pool. Now they have a body, they have fingers, they have toes, they have arms. It's the best kind of thing to help calm. Now, other things can come into play because you may think, oh, he goes in the pool, he gets worried. Well, there's other factors that are playing there. Maybe if he's anxious about going in the water, sometimes getting them past some of their fear and some of their things, maybe it's some sensory involved. Sometimes we can work on those things to help getting them in. And sometimes it just takes step by step, just to kind of ease their anxiety of maybe going into a big pool. But the idea of going into a pool for calming is huge. Now, when you think of it, now you're also adding some swimming and maybe some activities. And hopefully most of you have encountered a tired child after a long time in the pool. And that's definitely a great, easy strategy to do, especially when we're in summer. And karate and dancing, same thing. I mean, if you're working on, and especially karate, because you have to stop and pose and do certain movements. That stop and go is very regulating because you get a body going and then you stop. And then you got to get, so if you think about it, it can be a very regulating activity. Although again, that would probably talk a little bit more about the movement piece. Again, you can't really separate it. Again, I know some of you are familiar, tight fitted clothing, some of those like rash guards or the doesn't have to be Under Armour, but it's just a brand that always sticks in my head. But it's just tight clothing. And it just simply tight clothing, a little snug, or it's close to the skin, leggings, or even if you think about stockings for little girls, or whoever wants to wear them, that provides tons and tons of input. Even too, when you think about kids that you put shoes on them, and when you think about teaching a baby how to walk, most of the time you're supposed to teach them without shoes and socks on. You really want to get the feel of things and give them the heavy work and the input they need to develop that skill. And it's kind of the same thing. I know there is talk about weighted vest versus compression vest. There's not a lot of evidence that a weighted vest actually work. There's not really a lot of evidence that compression vests work. However, in my experience, I find that just wearing the compression is much better, and the kids react, have a better reaction in it. And the weighted vest, there's a whole protocol to that. And again, I just don't see it working. But again, it's always a try. It's always any strategy could work because, as we know, all kids are different. And literally, this could look so different for every single child. So, we always try to look at their certain strengths and then, go with that to help them progress and learn. Pillow fights are really easy. Rough play, that's a huge one in my house. My son is a wiggle worm just like I am, and we have to tire him out at night. And it looks a lot like yoga and stretching and pillow fights. I mean, you can really, if you think about it, picking up a pillow and whacking someone, it gets tiring. Maybe I'm an old lady, but it does get tiring. And even the rough play, and when you think about it again, that rough play, the tickling, all of that provides body awareness. So it really will help with, as a real simple strategy, if you could do that, even like playing on the couch, bounce on the couch, boom, I'm going to get you, and then get the pillows, boom, I'm going to, squish you with the pillows or squish you with a blanket. Or maybe you have a sibling that wants to jump on brother and sister, which would be even more fun. So, it doesn't have to be a huge ordeal or activity to implement some of this stuff. You could simply provide some of it throughout the day. And that's kind of the way you want to do it, is try to give some outlets throughout the day so you could stay regulated versus, being on either side of it. Um, Another simple one, pushing or pulling. I can't stress this enough. If you can't think of anything else to do, anything pushing resistive, anything pulling resistive. So if you had a laundry basket, and I would come up with this one, you stick anything in there. You could take water bottles. You could stick water bottles around the room, and then you're picking up water bottles. There's weight to it. You're adding a little bit of that input and that slowing down awareness into the activity, and then you put it in the laundry basket. And then the child has to push the laundry basket over the rug. Oh, let's go get the other water bottle, and you put that in. And now you're sticking stuff in the laundry basket's getting heavy, and the child has to push that around. And then let's say you wanted to work on colors with your child at home. You could do something like that. You could put colors on the water bottle or something and go get red, and you're pushing over red. So you're working on, and that's, basically what we try to do is work some sensory activities, some self-regulating activities, and add a little activity to it, so they feel success. And then again, they're getting all that input that they need, that again will help them feel successful. How much time do we have? Let me go on, and then I do have a video clip of a little girl. It is in an outpatient setting, but she's working with an OT, and they're doing some strategies on some heavy work that I thought might be helpful. But I think I'm going to go to the other stuff just in case anybody has some specific questions, and I want to make sure I have enough time for all of you. Okay, so that was proprioception, heavy work, calming. If there's anything you take from it, that is the calming, one of the calming senses that we use incredibly to help calm our kids down. So whatever you can think of, again, I have tons of strategies. You can go onto the internet and find tons and tons of strategies to work, heavy work that can help your kiddos. The other system that I also think is not talked about enough, I probably am guilty of that myself, is the interoception system. And this is the internal sense of your body. As I'm learning about this, and as OT goes along, I really notice more and more that our kiddos really do struggle with this sense. So this is what the information you're going to get if you're breathing. If you're breathing heavily, you feel your heart beating, you're hungry, you have to have a bowel movement. These are all sensory systems. So it is possible for our children to have underdeveloped internal systems. So, if we decide to potty train, well, maybe one of those issues is that the child is not feeling when he has to go. So we keep getting upset for him. Not that we get upset, but, he didn't go. Well, you know what? There's a good chance that he doesn't know that he needs to have a bowel movement. So we really have to try to figure things out in order to help him feel that inside. Excuse me. Sorry. There you go. So anyway, interoception, feeling what's going on inside. All right, now. Wait, why is my keyboard? 1 second. Okay. Sorry. Why is my computer stuck? This is weird. Wait, hold on a second. I'm sorry. I don't know why this won't. All right, there we go. Sorry about that. So sensitivities, what does that look like? Again, I mentioned tracking hunger, knowing when you're thirsty, not being able to recognize. I know there's so many times where I sit down with a child and it's time for eating, and they're fussing and crying and they don't want to come over for whatever the reason. And that they're clearly hungry, but maybe something's going on, and you think, like, I really don't think he realizes that or even knows that he's hungry. I've had this issue many times with kids where it's something that they haven't recognized. Recognizing pain. How hard is that to figure out? That's another internal sensation that's something that you're feeling that you need to be able to feel properly. Hot or cold temperature, that's another one. A big, huge ones are motion and your emotions and feelings. Obviously, if your sensory system is on hyperdrive right now and you're all over the place and you don't have the ability to feel or express your emotions, your system is going to be dysregulated and maybe all over the place. And you're going to have difficulty doing that. Because if you don't feel good, why are you going to want to feel better? If you're internally not feeling well, most of the time you're not going to feel well outwardly. I mean, I know there's probably many times where anybody's been sick, especially during these times, and just being able to regulate all of that, it's been hard. I know it's been hard for many people that I know. And then getting distracted by that. Some of our kids, their hearing is so amazingly acute. And I know they're talking about feeling, not necessarily hearing, but it's insane how sometimes kids, I have to listen really in the environment to hear, and they're talking about a lawnmower, and I hear really clear, oh yeah, oh, I hear a lawnmower, but it was really hard for me to hear, but they're distracted by a lawnmower. And if you're constantly getting distracted, and if it's feeling aversive, that's not going to make you feel good. So that's going to really put a stress on your system, and really you have to learn to work harder, because you have to filter out this noise that's like an earworm in your ear, and then it's bugging you. And now you have to be at school working, and you just are like, I don't feel good enough to be doing this kind of work, if that makes sense. And even feeling your heartbeat. I know sometimes if you're in an anxious situation, you can feel it, and that can be really distracting. And if you have a child that's a hard time regulating their emotions and their anxiety is always up, they're going to feel that at times. And that could be very distracting. And that could little things can throw our kids off. So the other things, I'm forgetting that I'm doing this today. And then another one is being able to tell how loud your voice is. You're not hearing, it's not processing. You're not able to figure that out yet. So these are a lot of things that, that can cause some anxiety, being able to feel some of that inside, and then being able to know what to do about, which is so difficult, obviously, especially too, when you're trying to teach kids and it's, they have control over their own, like the eating, and they have control over their bowel movements. But if you're trying to teach them, like, it's okay to feel this way, and it's a really hard thing to teach. So, learning all about this will really help with your child. Excuse me. Some strategies, they're mindfulness. Everybody's been talking lately about mindfulness and just being able to maybe meditate. And I know that would be a little difficult for some of our kids, but just being able to take a break. And I know a lot of our kiddos really like having quiet, maybe being by themselves, and just kind of going in the corner and just decompressing for a minute, because whatever, maybe OT came in and they're making me write and it's causing me anxiety, and now I need a break. And okay, go take a break and go. And sometimes you'll see kids, they hide their heads. They might go into a small corner. They're looking for a break, and they're actually letting you know that. So again, maybe it's not the right space, but they're recognizing they need a break. They need to withdraw and hide for a few minutes. Let them do that. It's okay to do that, because they're teaching themselves on their level how to regulate and how to calm. Another one, take 5 breathing. This is an easy one if we could get the kids to learn how to take deep breaths. And all take 5 breathing is, and you can also look this up on the internet, but you just kind of go up and down. So you're taking a breath at going around every finger. So you take a breath in, out, in, out, and then you go over, for 5 times. Okay, you took 5, hopefully some of our kids are okay, if they can understand that concept, and then kind of move on. So that's always something nice that you could have real easy in your back pocket. The other thing is, those heavy work activities will help. So again, remember that activity is calming. So hopefully we're tapping into it enough that your child is getting calmed by the activity. And then again, if you think about it, and to me it kind of makes sense, is, let's just say Johnny's not feeling, his body or whatever. Now all of a sudden you're doing some wrestling, some rough play, some crashing. Child's getting tired out. They're giggling. They're having a great time. All that input that you just provided to their body is helping them maybe understand, okay, all right, there's not necessarily that there's a stomach in there, but just being able to give that calming process to your body. So now it's like, okay, I'm calming, and then you're able to work on, okay, are you hungry? Do you want to eat? So it's kind of like trying to make those connections when they're regulated, if that all makes sense. I know a lot. Oh, so let me say, so heavy work. I did write down wheelbarrow walks. If you think about it, that's so much input. I don't even think I could do it anymore myself. It's so much work needs to be done for wheelbarrow walks. Even animal walks. I know a lot of times people do those bear walks, where you kind of walk on your hands and knees with your legs straight, kind of like a downward dog, but kind of walking. Yoga, again, is a big one. And I know you're probably thinking it might be a little bit complicated. However, I have done yoga. Again, it has to be repeatedly done, but I have done yoga with all kids on all type of diagnoses. And yoga has been a consistent, despite it. It's a little bit of learning, but our kids can learn it and they do get it. And even our kids love spinning. All of them love to spin. It's very alerting. I do have to say, spinning and going up upside down are two of the most intense inputs you can provide a child. However, you need to be careful because they're so intense, you can cause them to faint, get sweaty, become nauseous, dizzy, things like that. Sometimes our kids don't feel any of that, but it's just one of those things that if they all suddenly have that look like, oh my God, stop, it's too much, and they need a break. And then if you do give them input like that, some spinning. Now, I could say, I know most of the kids that I work with are okay with spinning. They can't get enough of it. But if your kid does kind of give you that face, and let them have a break and not do anything, just kind of give them that time so they can kind of get back to feeling a little better. Because I don't know if any of you are good at spinning as an adult, because as an adult, we don't spin. So we become more sensitive to it. That's exactly why most adults don't like to spin, because we don't spin. We don't do that kind of stuff as adults. So it becomes something that we never do, and we've become overly sensitive to it.
I was going to say, Eden, is that why I can't go on like rides anymore as an adult?
Exactly. Because how often do you spin? You don't spin that much. So then you go to the amusement park and your kid wants to go on and you're like, oh my God. It's because you haven't spun. We don't spin in our regular life unless you're all playing, Ring Around Rosie or something. And if you do, and it's funny because I was a kid that liked all that movement. When I started as an OT, I hadn't done a lot of spinning. I used to get so sick and so nauseous. But then I'm spinning with your kids and doing all that. Now I'm fine. I'm sitting there spinning away, and then everybody's watching me getting nauseous because they can't think that just looking at it gets them sick. And then again, and I did mention this before, repetitive and rhythmical. And I did mention the vestibular input because, again, it's hard to separate. Again, vestibular means movement. And it's just that repetitive work or that repetitive input. So I gave the example of the baby, the infant, of swaddling. So that's pretty, you're swaddling the baby, you're rocking, it becomes pretty predictable. You could do that on a ball. Like, so if, Johnny needs to bounce, he needed that input, and you just bounce. If you think about calming, you're not going to be, okay, Johnny, obviously, you're going to do it slower. However, one thing to also keep in mind when you're doing activities, if Johnny is all the way up here and you're coming in all chill and relaxed, you and Johnny are probably not going to be meshing well because Johnny's up here and you're trying to bring him down here, but he's not ready. So what you need to do is you need to meet him at that energy level. So okay, let's go. And then let's say you're swinging and then all of a sudden I put Johnny in the swing and he's having a ball. But remember, too much movement does not help a child regulate in certain situations. So if I'm giving him all this swinging and spinning, I hear that all the time. I put him in swing. He likes to move. He loves to swing, but he's still bouncing out of the swing when he gets out. There's been nothing that his body had to do any heavy work. So again, say I'm in there, I'm spinning him, swinging him. Now, John, I got him. I got connected with him. He's there with me. We're working together. He wants to do what I want him to do, and we're playing. So then what you want to do is kind of bring it down. Maybe you could change positions. Now I have Johnny on the swing, but he has to go do a puzzle, and he has to keep his body up while he's on his belly, push himself to go get the piece and put the, stabilize his body and put the puzzle piece into the puzzle. His body's now doing a lot of work. Hopefully I was able to easily transition from Johnny being up here and swinging and then bringing him down to still swinging and still giving him that input, but now his body's doing heavy work and he's calm, hopefully. So that would just be an example of that rhythmical input. You just want it to be calm. You just don't want it to be all over the place. And I think that probably makes sense to most people, especially, with us who have kids. Visual prompts and cues. We do this a lot with our kiddos at school. We try to help them. A big thing in speech, and no, Amanda is doing it all the time. One of the speech therapists is trying to work on having them communicate their emotions. It's very hard. Most adults can't communicate their emotions. It's really hard for a child, obviously, especially our child with some of these diagnoses, to do that. So we're constantly modeling things. You're mad, you're mad. But by the way, one of our kids did that today. But I'm mad, I'm frustrated. So we're modeling and showing them and just giving them a voice of what that means, because we would love for a kid to come over and say, I'm mad, and then, I need a break and I'm going to go bounce on that ball over there or something like that. So just giving them cues. We try to put pictures all around the school. We're still working on pictures. It's like one of those things that we're constantly doing to just cue our kids, to show them what it is, where they have to go, what they have to do, what's expected of them. And probably most of us work off a schedule, I'm assuming. So if you didn't have a schedule and you were working and you never paid it, I'm sure your sensory system would constantly be in this crazy state, because, things are just not organized. You don't know what to do. It would make anybody crazy. So always having things like a picture schedule really helps our kids know where they're going. It's kind of like the same thing. If you have a schedule and you're trying to follow something, probably makes you organize and helps your brain function and do the things you need to do as a parent. And then the last one, and these aren't limited to this, there's many other strategies. These are just a few that I had listed. But social stories, you may have heard us talk about social stories. And social stories is just kind of like teaching what we want them to do. So for example, we have a little kiddo that keeps kicking his shoes off. We're going to write a social story about the importance of you keeping your shoes on because you're safe and whatever. So it's just teaching them. Some of you, I've made potty training books talking about the steps of potty training and then what is expected of them, so they have an idea of what the situation, what's expected and what the activity will be. So yep, that was that. And let's see. Oh, I did want to take note, if your child is having a challenging behavior, a lot of times too, in the internal sense, sometimes there is a medical issue. A lot of our kids suffer from GI problems. So if you think about it, you're having heartburn or reflux, I would feel miserable. I'm sure your kiddos would feel miserable. Again, making sure, obviously, we got to get that reflex under control so we can work on regulation. So always, please, if you suspect a medical problem, please talk to your doctor. And then I do, if you have an OT that is not me, and anybody, but I would refer to your team. I will be absolutely happy to give you any strategies and we could talk. But your OT knows your child way more than I do, and they would know the exact activities to pick, or maybe have that conversation with them, because they would know better, or even the therapy team, they would know better of what is the most appropriate activity. Because I know sometimes we try to do something with a child and then we find out a child perseverates on that, and it's like, all right, we're going to avoid that activity for now and teach them other things before we go back to something like that. So that's always a good thing to always know, when we're picking things. And then, like I've been saying, feel free, please contact me. If you have questions, I'm here. I know my own families, I will talk to you more if you need me to. So, no problem of email me and I'll be happy to send some things. Oh, I also want to mention that I do have some handouts on some heavy work ideas. I should have posted an example here. I did not, but if you do want some little handout, I can email it to you, put your email in the chat, and I will definitely get that information out to you. And just let me know, say I'm looking for, the sensory information, I'll send that to you. Okay, so yes, Tomorrow, also, I do want to mention we have our wonderful training with Danielle on potty training. I know a lot of you have questions with that, and I definitely recommend going there. We do use some of the principles that Danielle talks about in our own work at school, so it would be a really good thing if some of you are interested in that. That way we can be consistent in the way we do things. And that was sensory. So if you have questions or you want to talk about something, please, and you're comfortable opening up, please let me know, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Adrienne. That was really, really awesome.
Thank you. You're welcome.